everyone! Welcome back to the Belonging Experiment, where we dive into life in between worlds, cultures, and countries. I am Anu. I was born and raised in India. I lived in Japan for about 10 years, and now I'm currently living in Portugal.
Yes, and as usual, I'm Roby. So I'm currently in the US, but I'm originally from the Philippines and I moved to Japan also and I lived there for 10 years. And we're here to just discuss topics that we've been encountering and moving to different countries. And today we're very excited to have another guest and let's welcome Mico.
Hi, hi. How?
Mika and I met in Japan, and now maybe just a fun fact for everyone. We actually briefly worked in the same company for a few months. That's very brief.
All
All
three of
three of
us.
us. We're not gonna reveal the company, but you'll know. Okay, so Mika has also lived, of course, originally from the Philippines too, and lived in Japan where we met. And he lived in New York and now maybe rediscovering the
Mhm.
Philippines as well. So, yeah, welcome, Miko.
Hello, hello. Thank you for having me. Well, I'm such a big fan of your show. I was telling you about. It's something that I was
Oh,
listening to the car. I was driving somewhere with my mom, and then I was just listening to it. I think 4 episodes worth, and I kept on laughing, especially when you talk about your husband. So it was great hearing you both. It was great seeing you on camera while I listened to the podcast. So thanks for having me. As Roby said, I have been living away from home for about 10 years. So I started in the Philippines. I was born and raised here. And then I moved to Japan. That's where I met both Roby and Anu. And then eventually, working in Japan brought me to New York. And I stayed there for a couple of years. And then now I'm back in the
oh.
Philippines looking to see what I'll be doing next. So, not really being an expert on FOMO, but if you can think about it that way, I have like 10 years worth of FOMO experience. So, maybe we can unpack all of that today.
For sure.
Oh, I love that. I never thought this early in our podcasting journey that I would hear anybody come and say, I'm a huge fan of your show.
I
My
know.
goodness. I feel so fulfilled. Biko, thank you so much. Thank you. We appreciate the time you've taken to listen into our show. And I guess that's why we have you today as our guest as well, because you're somebody I'm sure who understands very well, based on your experience and your background, what we are talking about. Which brings me to today's topic. Today, we're going to dive into something that lingers even after you have adjusted, the fear of missing out. And we're not just talking about, what we could be doing back home, but also about people, traditions, routines, even little things like seasonal foods. So, before we begin today's episode, we would like to start with one topic or one activity that we did in the previous week. So, who would like to go first?
I nominate Miko.
Fine.
I
Okay.
nominate Miko.
I think I'll mention two things. Maybe one something special to me. Yeah, my dog had her fifth birthday yesterday, so we had like a small
Happy
party.
birthday,
It's her
Nami.
first birthday here in the Philippines. So my dog has been traveling too. My dog was born in Japan, and then
Oh,
we moved her to New York,
Oh,
and then I moved her back here to the Philippines. So it's her first birthday here in Manila. So it was pretty fun doing that. But maybe related to today's topic, it was the birthday of my other friend last Saturday. So I was thinking about it the other day and I realized that this was actually one of the first birthdays that I've done in person because it's just been so long since
oh.
I've been able to celebrate a birthday of a friend, of a close friend, for such a long time. And it made me really happy that at least after such a long
Mm.
time, I was able to celebrate in person together somebody, a close friend's birthday.
Oh, that's nice.
oh, that's
I don't,
so
yeah.
sweet.
And happy birthday, Nami. So if you want to follow Nami, it's Nami.Kishu in Instagram.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I'm gonna go check this out.
I know. Do you
Wow,
want to
that's
go next? Because I have something, but I think it will be related to our topic today. So I'll go last, maybe. You want to go
okay.
next?
Can I show you something? Do you
Sure.
know what this is?
Oh, onigiri maker. Is it?
Yes!
Wow.
So this was one of the last things that I purchased before I left Japan. I bought it in Daiso. I
Oh.
bought it for 100 yen. And to be very honest, I didn't think I'll use it because I was just like, whatever. I just had this feeling and I just went to Daiso and I just bought so much. And this was one of the items that I bought. Yesterday, I was going through Netflix and I saw this Japanese show. I still haven't started watching videos of Japan or any Japanese shows because I'm scared that the moment I see it, I'll start having these nostalgic feelings. So I haven't been going there at all. But yesterday I saw some trailers which look very interesting, and I'm like, oh, maybe I should give it a try. But then that reminded me that one thing that I really miss is the ease of access to convenience stores and convenience store foods. And the first thing that came to my mind was an onigiri. So yesterday I had a little bit of a tooth pain and I couldn't, couldn't really chew. And I'm like, onigiri. That's what we're gonna have today. It just came to me like dinner menu. I always have sushi rice in the house, so I
Oh.
made some rice. In Portugal, we get amazing tuna fillets, so I pulled out some tuna
Oh.
fillets. I don't have mayo in the house because we're not a mayo household. I used yogurt and I made a tuna yogurt onigiri, and it was
Yum.
the most fulfilling meal, and this came in so handy, yo. Like I've made onigiris with my hand before. It's painful and it's very hot, but I don't get the shape correctly. But this gave me the perfect shape. And then when I'm done, look at this thing. Just kind of push it out. It was
Yeah.
so simple. So
Yeah.
anybody wants to make onigiris, please get yourself this onigiri maker.
I
I
thought
highly
you'd say
recommend.
like I thought you'd say like if you want onigiri, please order. This is my number. That
You
would be a
know,
good
I
business,
think I
Anu.
think I'm
That
going to
would be a good
provide you
business.
onigiri services in my neighborhood.
I
I'll
think
start
so
there.
too.
You wrap it in the seaweed too.
Your turn. So we get it's not the best ones. I should probably go to like a Korean store or a Japanese store. Any Asian
Yeah.
store would have good ones, but it's not as good as the ones that we used to get in Japan.
Yeah.
This
Sure.
is for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. You'll
What
settle
about
with that for
you?
sure. Yeah, so me, I have something to share. So I think it's been a while that I haven't really exerted an effort to connect to other people here because when I first moved, I think there were just a lot of changes. So, and I feel like, oh, I don't want to make friends again because then anyway, I could just call my friends from Japan or in the Philippines. Like, it's just a lot of things happening. And I think emotionally, I was a little bit of an introvert for the first few months. And after a year, I finally felt like I was ready to go out and join networking events. So I found a group. It's called Japan Association Society of Minnesota. So I said, okay, I'll give this a try. So I went to a networking event and it was sponsored by a Japanese company in Minnesota. And it's a typical, like how networking events or meetups in Japan feels like it's the same way. So we have what I like about it is there's, of course, some Japanese people in there who, got assigned here in the US, or maybe they already moved here, they've lived here for a long time. And then I also met people who have lived in Japan longer than I did. They've been in Japan for like 20 years and they're still there. They're still finding that connection with Japan. So I realized two things. One is that I've met people who are, let's say, in the inverse of my situation. So they're Japanese who lived in the US and they don't feel like they're 100% Japanese anymore because they've lived in the US for so long. But then this is kind of like a community where you just have different connections with Japan. And I've met a guy who lived in Japan for like the last 20 years and now moved back to the US. And so I felt better in a sense that I've only lived there for 10 years and then I'm feeling all this fear of missing out. And then I meet a guy who has been there longer than I did and he just turned out okay, like he's happy, like he's reconnecting with the US again. So I think that made me feel like, oh yeah, you could live your life, just, finding some connection with Japan and moving on eventually. And I feel like I'm going to just turn out okay with all the FOMO feelings that I've been feeling. So I think it was nice to find a certain community that has a connection with Japan, and they all have different stories. And of course, there are some people as well who have not been to Japan yet and wanted to go to Japan. So we're all in different stages, but I think we share that same passion, or just the same interest for the country. Yeah. So yeah, that's my last week highlight of trying to connect, find a community, and we'll see where it goes. Like, maybe we'll have friends there, maybe not, but I think that's nice to know that you have a community to go to. Yeah.
Can I just say that when I
That's my
met
story.
both of you 10 years ago, I wouldn't have thought that 10 years forward you would be this much influenced by Japan. And it's really cool seeing that.
Yes. I think, Miko, we always joke that I think when we first came to Japan, you were the one who is more like you love
Hmm.
Japan. I was like, oh, I just happened to be here. 10 years later, I was like the one who can't move on.
I think when we started, I was always envious about my husband's friend circle because you were a part of that, Miko. And it used to be all of you did fun things. I remember those picnics that we went in Shinjuku Park. And somehow you always had something fun happening. And I think that was so important, even for him, for my husband, because that's why he had such a good influence in the first few years. He really liked it. And even when I said, oh my God, like, this is what we're going to do all our lives, he would always be like, use all of you as an example, show the friend circle, and be like, everybody's having so much fun. I'm sure we can too, stop being so anxious about it. So I think hanging out with all of you was a very important core memory for me at that time. And those memories are what helped also when we had to stay there for longer. We're like, oh, okay, they're nice people. Everybody can have fun together. So I guess it's okay.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So let's then transition to our topic, which is the fear of missing out. And I think there are different angles to FOMO. Some of it is, a simple FOMO could be missing out on a celebration of a family or a milestone of a friend. But I guess it could also be on a deeper level. And maybe it could also be watching the whole country move on without you, or watching the whole city just move on with different progress and you're not there anymore. So I think that's one of the hardest parts, seeing the life you left behind continue. And you see it in social media, you see it, and and you hear it from the stories of your friends. So I think that's the first thing we want to unpack is, what is that one moment you saw happening back home, or maybe in the recent country that you have left? So maybe our Japan, Mika, is your New York, where, because that's the last country that you left from.
True.
And, what is that one moment that you saw, maybe online or stories from your friends, that made you feel like you were missing out on something? So who wants to start? I don't know if you have something to say already now, Mika, but you
Mm.
could start.
Yeah, I think maybe the biggest one for me is seeing my nephews and nieces grow up really quickly. Because I think this is, I mean, from being an infant into a toddler, I think that's the age where you'll really see a big difference. And I guess that's where you start seeing their personality. So I have three nephews now and one niece. The first time I've met them, I think I was in the middle of my life abroad. But seeing them grow up, just seeing photos and videos, then not being able to see them in person, such that the very first time I saw them, it was a different feeling, like it makes you think, am I willing to not be part of their lives, or am I ready to really not see like the way they grow up? Or maybe the worst feeling is, am I ready that they don't even know me, where they just know me from a photo?
Yeah.
They just
Yeah.
know me from when my brother says that this is your Uncle Mico. He lives in the US. Maybe he'll visit you soon. So that makes you think a lot. And I think for me, if I think about it, when I was in Japan, it wasn't this feeling of FOMO wasn't very strong. Just because I think because it was kind of easier for
Mm,
us to go home. Japan is like a 4 hour
yeah.
flight to Manila, and then you have all of these low cost carriers that can bring you there.
Sure.
I think when we were because we were in Japan in our 20s, so or like late 20s, and that was also the time that our friends were getting married, or my friends at least were getting married. So
Mm,
going home for a wedding ceremony wasn't very difficult because I mean you could go there for a weekend and spend a few say $100 and it doesn't feel as bad because you get to be part of the celebration. But I felt it so much more, of course, when I was in New York because in New York I cannot go home anymore. Of course, I
Mm,
cannot afford to go home to Manila that
mm,
quickly. A trip to
huge
Manila is something
difference,
you
yeah.
plan for, something that you really try to maybe save up for, not as like when we were in Japan. So the the only option you have is really social media. And like what you said, Roby, social media kind of makes you, I mean, it puts you in a bad place. So
correct.
it kind of like it blows it up to an insane proportion where it just messes up with your mind. And then much more than that, being on the other side of the world, being in New York, where my friends were in Japan, my friends were in the Philippines, sometimes at the end of the work day, and that's the only time that I could reply, all of them are already up and they're busy at their jobs, so they don't really reply as much anymore. And when it's my time to kind of wake up and it's their nighttime, it's just that the time zones don't match. So it's really much harder to
Yeah.
deal with
Yeah.
it. As much as you want to, it's a struggle when you're on that side of the world. That's why when I was telling Roby when she finally moved to the US, I was so happy. Like Roby, I finally have a friend now in the same time zone. Let's talk.
Same time zone.
Let's talk because I need to talk to somebody.
Yes, that's true. Yeah. No, absolutely. I like what you said about the FOMO was not as much when we moved to Japan. And I feel like that's accurate 100% because maybe it's the geographical location where it's just very near to the Philippines. And to be fair, I have a lot of friends who also love Japan. So they would visit me in Japan. And I didn't feel like we really missed out a lot. Of course, we're now in our 30s. And even them in the Philippines, they were busy working, and so I did, like we would catch up, of course, during travel. So
Mhm.
100%, that's very accurate. Um, what I wanted to add, I think, is so for me, I think it's the same thing. The FOMO happened when I moved to the US and I think my story is that because I was born and I lived in the Philippines. Philippines is always home. Like I would always, like my parents
Mhm.
are still there. I have a connection to the Philippines. I'm a
Sure.
Filipino. So I could always go back there. And no matter how much it changes, it will always be like your home country, right? So I think my FOMO was more on Japan because now that I moved to the
Mm.
US, I'm not really Japanese. I just live there. So if I don't live there anymore, what's my connection to Japan? And I think that's where the FOMO is coming from, that eventually, me living in Japan will just be a memory that happened. I don't have a connection there anymore. Of course, I still have a few friends there, but I don't have family there. Like, what would be my
Mhm.
reason to come back? And I think I'm overthinking it, but that's where my FOMO is coming from, that I'll eventually become just a normal tourist to
Mhm.
Japan. And I think that's where the fear of missing out. I don't know if you guys feel that, but it's like I'll be okay, badly put. From being a permanent resident, I'll
Mm.
be downgraded to just a tourist. I think that's where my FOMO is coming from. Yeah. So I don't know how to say that. But that's it.
I like how Miko mentioned about the two transitions, about FOMO and the two different transitions. And I'm trying to think about where my FOMO actually lies. And I think coming from communities that are so closely knit, we come from communities of large families. So for even for me, I think the first thing that comes to our mind is weddings or celebrations. Unfortunately, in my case, for the close family weddings and the cousins who got married, I've been able to be there for these weddings. But then I miss the engagement ceremonies, which are
Mm.
also there's a lot of event. There's so much that happens around these
Yeah.
engagements, and I've missed some really close friends' weddings just because it didn't, like, timing wise, it just somehow didn't work. So it would happen like in the first week of December or early January, which was just after the time that we could take holidays because we had the factory closure, and because we had these block holidays we could take off those particular days without having to worry about it too much. So we would take off only on those days, but of course they are not going to have their weddings according to our factory closure. So I would be like, that's when I get really clingy with other friends. Of course, I won't be calling the person who's getting married. Like, for example, most recently, one of my cousins, he got married last year in January, but his engagement ceremony happened before. I would have called I would, like, the day of the engagement, I kept taking turns to call every member in the family. I'm like, what are you doing? Where are you? What are you wearing? Why is nobody responding? Why are you not sending pictures? Like, take a picture. Where are you? They're like, no, we're just waiting because we're getting delayed. There's traffic. I'm like, send me a picture. They're like, what do you want to see a picture of? I'm like, no, I send me a selfie. They're like, no, our hands are full. I'm like, okay, I'll call you back later. And then I call the next. I get needlessly clingy. And then I begged my cousins, I'm like, can you please set up like a, like a live wedding situation or whatever? And then my in-laws were there, called up my in-laws. I'm like, what are you doing? Send me a picture. Like, my father-in-law diligently sent me pictures of whatever
Yeah,
happened, and
yeah.
he's giving me a live update of what's happening because he was like, okay, I understand, and watching on the live view. But I think apart from these moments where I know people get together, I don't. I'm wondering if I do have FOMO or if I'm just nostalgic for certain things. Like recently, the people I keep in touch with most in Japan are my colleagues, obviously. Like you said, we don't have family or anything there. So they had like a get together and they were like, hey, and we're just thinking of you and
Mm.
sent a picture. In some sense, it feels really nice to say, oh,
Yes.
they haven't forgotten
Mm.
me. How sweet. But then the
Yes.
other way, I'm just like, oh my God, like I want to bombard them with questions. I'm like, who's that new person? Why, why is this person sitting here? What are you guys talking about? Like, are you going for a second round of drinking? Are you going for a third round of karaoke? Like, what's the plan for the rest of the night? Are you having as much fun? Like, I want to ask all these questions, but I'm just like, just calm down. Let them have their fun. That's
Yes,
usually where
yes.
my FOMO lies.
Maybe I'd like to add in
Go ahead,
something that
Mico.
maybe you and I mean Roby and Anu, I mean you haven't maybe seen yet. And this is kind of what hurts the most was when you actually go back home. And like let's just say home as in like Philippines for Yas and Roby and India for Anu. And when you finally see in person that life really moved on without you, it it's actually really bad. The way it hits you very hard.
Oh,
Not that you can do anything about it, because I don't think you're supposed to
oh.
do anything about it. You just are, I mean, you just allow yourself to feel
Yeah,
it. But when it hits you and when you see it in person that life did move on without you, it's something
true.
to kind of
It's
you have to kind of be aware on how you handle it because you shouldn't let it overcome you. But at the same time, you have to understand that and accept that yeah, it has moved on
Hmm.
without you.
right, right. Oh, that's a very good point. Yeah, I've never really
I
thought about that.
I think I understand what you mean now when you say for you your nephew is your reference point, because in general what happens in my case is a lot of my friends are either still single or they don't have children as yet. So when I see them, I don't get that feeling at
Mm.
all, because when I'm in town, they make sure that I become their priority for those 2 weeks. They make sure that they're available. They're like, come and stay with us 2 days, 3 days, stay with us for a week. They are as clingy and needy as I am, and I absolutely love it. But when I see their kids, I'm like, when did you grow up? This kid that I used to buy these books with big fonts is suddenly reading like older, like young adult books, and I'm like, can you really? You can read that much? Like, you're so quiet, you're so timid. Like, what happened? You used to be all over, me, and like, I have to make an effort to make this conversation because I feel like this child has forgotten me. And, before I left, we used to be joined at the hip. So I think I think you're right. I understand that reference point with the child.
I have a story on the other side though, because most of my family are in the Philippines, but our eldest brother moved to the US and he's now a citizen here. He's been here for more than 2 decades now. So last weekend we went to their place to celebrate my niece's high school graduation, and she's going to college now. And that's
Yeah.
the ultimate, like, things have moved on, life has moved on. But what I feel like now I was able to join it, finally a milestone that they celebrate here in the US, because they were usually the ones who were the farthest from us. But me being here and he's also here kind of like gives me a sense of family for sure, because they're just,
Mm.
although they're 6 hours away, but for big milestones like this we could plan to join them. So I think that was something that I was happy about, to join her in this big celebration. And guys, like, they were very fun. They
Mhm.
were very young, energetic. There's a lot of possibilities because they're all going to different colleges. It's like, oh wow. I'm glad they had fun in high school. I think that was something that I kind of like just started to tell my niece, was like, I'm very happy that you maximized your high school. College will be very different. So she's just starting out her life. So that's really nice to see.
You must have been really young when your niece was
Oh,
born. She seems like such a
Yes,
grown-up child.
yes. I was already working. Just graduated from college, started working, and she was a little baby, and now she's like going to college. That's crazy. But yes, that happened.
wow.
So, moving on to the next segment, since we're already, I think, in that direction, segment two, the mental tug of war. While we are having all the fun and having all the new life experiences, sometimes there's this guilt like, should I feel bad for wanting something different, or for choosing
Mm,
this life, or for leaving people behind?
mm.
When did you have that feeling the most, and how did you cope with that?
I think I could start with this one because I have something that's really bothering me usually. So my guilt is usually with my parents, I think, or my
Mm.
family
Mm,
and back in the Philippines. And that is because, so back in the Philippines, I think we live like a middle class kind of lifestyle. And every time I go home, I think the lifestyle is very different from my lifestyle now. Because of course in Japan I was alone, and like you started working, you started having enough financially that you get to enjoy the finer things in life. And every time I go home to the Philippines, I think my parents continued to live their own lifestyle. And it's not to say, like, even if you give them money, they're still not comfortable, like, upgrading their lifestyle, I would say. So I could really feel the gap in my own
mm,
lifestyle back in Japan and now in the US to their own lifestyle. And they're happy. They're okay with it. They don't want to change their lifestyle. That's just what it is. But I feel like I always have this guilt of, like, should I be giving more? Should I be including them in all my travel? Should I want them to experience what I'm experiencing. So I think that's where my mixed emotions is always kind of like catch up with me, is that guilt feeling of, like, I feel like I should be giving more. I should be giving them more travel opportunities. But then again, I think maybe that's just me trying to compensate for not being
mm.
there physically with them. That's what I feel.
I mean, just to add to that, for me, ever since COVID and post COVID, I've seen a series of illnesses in the family, some short term, some a little bit more long term. And I think for me, the guilt comes from the fact that there's nothing that I can do other than get
Mm.
advice or listen to diagnosis, or that, like, there's literally nothing that we can do. Can we drop everything and go? In some cases there is legitimate reasoning to do that, and in some cases you're not able to do that. So when do you choose to say, oh, I need to go be with my family now? And when do you get to say, I can't be with my family right now, or choose, like, especially I think during COVID was the most difficult. I was in India because of an illness in my family, and my husband was here. When his parents got sick, both of them had to be hospitalized at the same time, and there were moments where we couldn't reach anybody because of signal issues or whatever, to a point where I could see his absolute frustration, where he said, I'm going to leave everything and come. And the worst part about leaving everything and coming is, if you, Japan had a rule saying if you're
Yeah.
not a PR holder, you cannot come back into the country from India. I couldn't come back directly to Japan. I had to fly to Russia. I spent a bomb, by the way, doing that. I had to stay in Russia for 14 days. And only after I came back did I realize how hard it was for him, because even work was really hectic to a point where he couldn't think straight anymore. I think living abroad during
Yeah.
COVID really changed
Yeah.
perspectives for
I
me.
was
Yeah. Yeah.
hoping neither of you would bring it up because I was afraid of this exact topic because I was thinking about it and I had no answer. Like to what you said, Roby, like the guilt about being away from family, and to what you said, Anu, like that fear, like during COVID, you're so far away. I was thinking about it, but maybe in case you ask again, I was so blank. I was so stumped for an answer, and until now, I don't really have an answer. I feel I'm lucky because like my brother is in Manila in COVID, and until now, like, and he's the one really looking after my mom. And I mean, he doesn't live at home, but he's the one really looking after our mom. So that lessened the guilt a little bit, but it's still
Mm.
there. It's still guilt. But maybe I think to what you said, Roby, I feel like at the end of the day, and I think all of our parents are like this. Our parents worry more about us than we worry about them. So
Mm.
as much as we worry about them, just imagine how much they worry about us. And I guess for us, I mean, the only thing we can do is really just to be able to stay connected, be able to really like show up even if we're miles away. Because I think that's all that they ask for and that's all that they really want. Knowing that at the moment they can speak with you, at the moment they can hear from you, and that's really all that they need. As much as we feel guilty about it, I think it's really part of being away from
Yeah.
family. And then for all our cultures, family is really very important. So yeah, I told you I still don't have an answer.
Yeah.
This is an interesting side note. Speaking of COVID, so I was flying in and out of US and Japan during COVID because that was the time that I was starting to prepare to move to the US. We were also building our warehouse in the US at that time. So it was hard and it was interesting flying in and out of Japan during COVID because you'll really see all of
Mm.
the rules that they put in place and you'll just laugh at the rules sometimes. So what happens there is like I will enter Japan, I'll spend 14 days in quarantine. And then after that 14 days, it's my turn to go back to the US again. So I'll leave and come back to the US and then do it all over again. But the funny thing is, I was flying in and out of Japan. I didn't get COVID anytime during that kind of high risk period when there were no vaccines yet. And then eventually I went home to Manila in 2022. It was my first time in
Oh,
Manila.
I remember that.
Yeah, it was my first time in Manila after the pandemic. I was so happy to be with my family, to be with my nephews, to be with my mom, and that's actually where I got COVID. So it was my mom who gave me COVID. The 3 years ish, 2.5 years that I was avoiding it, eventually I'll get it from home. But yeah, I mean, it was funny to think about it. But thinking about it, I mean, at the end, I think it's maybe better to have had it here at home because at least I know that when my mom had it,
Yeah,
I have
sure.
it, and we're together when we're having it, versus me on the being on the other side of the world worrying that, oh, my mom has it now, and then what do I do? Should I go home? At least I was here and I didn't have
Sure.
to go through all of
Mm.
that. But yeah.
That's so funny. I remember that because I think you were looking forward for that vacation because you haven't
Trip,
had a
yeah.
vacation for a while. So he has everything planned, like I'll go here, I'll go there. And then he had to stay at home for like more than a
The
week
entire
just
trip, yeah.
doing nothing.
My
Yeah.
poor thing.
Okay, okay.
Yeah,
COVID,
when
yeah, definitely
COVID was special.
changed our perspective. And it's funny how it's already 5 years ago when we had COVID, but I still feel like it was just last year, 2 years. Definitely gave us a different perspective of time for sure. So now we've discussed the fear of missing out, things that we've left behind. And sometimes we also see things moved on from social media or hear it from our friends. There's a part where there's also a mental tug of war, as we've just discussed, the the guilt that we're feeling for being away, for choosing this decision that we are at the moment. So I think the last part of our discussion here is we want to find peace of where we are at the moment and what the decisions that we've made. So I think my question to us all is, what has helped you balance this fear of missing out, the guilt of the decision that you've made? Was there something that you have successfully did that made this whole thing more, I would say you're more at peace with the decisions that you've made, or is this something that you're still discovering and maybe you're still finding out how to
Mm.
make peace with?
I think what you said, like it's that tug of war that really kills you. But I think the answer to that is you just really have to get yourself out of it. And I think that's what I've been feeling. I
Mm.
realized, like when you asked earlier, like what's that moment when you feel like you have a hard time thinking about the stuff you left behind? I was thinking in my head, I was like, actually, that's me every day. Like every day I think about my life in Japan. Every day I think about my life in New York. Sometimes I feel like my friends are annoyed with me because when I post on Instagram, I still like use
Mhm.
Japanese songs. Like I put Japanese
Yeah.
characters. I share with them like reels about Japanese culture, and like they don't care. Like you don't live there anymore. Like why are you doing this? So I know they're all annoyed, but that's my way of coping and dealing with what I've left behind. So it's really every day that I go through that. And that makes you feel like that's where the doubt starts. Like, I really like make the right
Me.
choice? Am I happy with leaving Japan and New York behind? You start thinking about like what you're missing, what you like, what you long for. But I think maybe hopefully shortly, but what really comes out of that, I think, and at least for me, the way I've kind of it has become part of my routine thinking about my life in Japan and New York. It's like at the end of this tug of war, there's always that clarity. And I hope there would be clarity for you and for the people listening to you, is that it's supposed to be part of that tug of war. I feel that at the end of all these emotions that
Mm.
you go through, you eventually end up at the point of clarity where suddenly you become hopeful again. And suddenly you start thinking about, okay, the way I started or the way I lived in Japan, the way I lived in New York, eventually a lot of those things for me were also new. A lot of things started for me in those places. And you just start to become hopeful that yes, the new place that I'm in right now, it will bring me a lot of new things that the future me would look back on also fondly. So I think what we shouldn't forget is, as painful or as much of an emotional roller coaster, at the end of this process, there should be a point where we kind of keep our foot on the ground and know that at the end of this
Mm.
process, we would be clear about what we're feeling and that where we are right now is actually what we hoped, what we asked for in like some years in the past.
I completely agree with you on that. I love how you were so solution oriented. Like this is kind of summarize the whole show. I think for me, typically, one thing I realized is when I was new to Japan, I realized my phone habits were really bad. Typically, we always, whether it's friends or family, we always call each other on a regular basis, and you tend to pick up the phone. And Japan is not like that. You don't talk on the phone while walking to the station. You don't talk on the phone while waiting for the train. You don't talk on the phone while you're on the train. So, what used to be a regular conversation became a once a week, maybe once a month conversation, to a point where I started feeling that I was not being there for people. Maybe everybody is growing up, everybody's going through a difficulty. And my favorite thing was to be everybody's agony aunt, but I wasn't doing that for people who really mattered to me in my life. And I kind of started feeling that. But then there was nothing that I could really do, because this is how work is, this is how life is. And people didn't really understand also, I think, initially, to say, why am I not calling, why am I not keeping in touch? They're like, why don't you write to us, why don't you keep in touch? And then the first few round of visitors I had, they realized that in their first week of travel, people were asking them the same question, saying, why aren't you calling us, why aren't you talking to us? My aunt who was staying with me was like, oh, people, my friends are asking me why I'm not posting anything, but by the end of the day I'm so tired. I'm like, welcome to my life. When I moved, I became so disconnected with my phone. Like now,
Mm.
when I go out, I just don't carry my phone with me. After 5 or 6 p.m., I don't even care where my phone is unless my husband calls me. Because I'm like, everybody I know is asleep or is busy at work. So now suddenly I'm trying to reach out to people, and I'm like, hey, how are you doing? What is happening? How are you feeling? I'm more active in groups now. So I still I'm not able to very easily pick up the phone and call people, because I'm still like, oh, what's this person doing? What if they're busy? What if in the middle of something? What if they can't talk? What if I'm putting pressure on them to have this conversation? So I'm slowly trying to be a little bit more phone
Mm.
friendly than I have been in the last 9 years. This is one thing that I do to cope. And I think the second thing for me is also, right now I'm in the process where I'm waiting for my residence visa, which means I can't really do anything in the meantime. And sometimes I really lose hope and I'm like, that's it, my career is ended. I make it a point to not go on LinkedIn because everybody's
Mhm.
sharing these amazing
Mhm.
bits of theirs. And I'm like, oh my God, everybody's going forward in their career. What am I doing? And then I remind myself, well, when I was posting positive things, career changes and moves and promotions, somebody was looking at my posts, probably thinking, what am I doing with my life? So maybe this is just my turn. And then the only thing I tell myself is, if I was able to be employable in Japan, I can be employable in Europe. I'm sure of it. So it's
Yes,
just a
yes.
matter of using this time to be productive. There are days when I say I don't want to do anything. I just want to lie down, just leave me alone. I'm just sitting down with a book. And there are days where I say, no, I'm going to be productive today. I sign up for many events. I do like, how can I use ChatGPT efficiently for day-to-day learning, read up HR articles on Gartner, whatever free resources I can use, I try to make use of it. And I think that's when I tell myself, I'm like, it's okay. Like exactly like what Miko said. No, it's okay. Like you made this decision. And
Yes.
recently I pulled out my summer wardrobe and my husband's like, hey, do you need to go shopping? Do you need clothes? And I'm like, that's when I was looking through my clothes, I realized last year I was well aware of the fact that I may not be employed already by this time. So what I've done is I have bought new t-shirts, not removed the tag, and just kept them in the bag to remind myself that I have new clothes. I don't need to shop when I'm not employed. I'm like, wow, I really thought this through. I didn't think I did, but I really thought this through. So now when I pull out t-shirts from last year, they're still like a year old, but they still have the tag on. So I'm just like, oh, this is a new t-shirt, so I don't need to buy clothes.
I just
This
want
was
to
my
react to
preparation.
what Anu said, because I feel like it's something that I wish I did more, like really talking on the phone, because that's really something that maybe it's lost already nowadays. But I remember this story, like your husband and I had a teammate before in that company that we all worked for. So he's Portuguese, I think, or at least he was from Portugal. And if you can remember the walk from Motosumiyoshi into the office, like that very long walk from that train station into the office, he actually uses that time to talk to his mom. So every single day that he goes to work, he would walk that kilometer or two just talking to his mom day
Wow.
in day out, and then probably he also does it going home from the office. And when I heard that he was doing like that, I felt that I think I should be doing that more. Eventually I didn't, but I
Mm.
whenever I think about it, I feel like I wish I did that more. So I'm really happy that you said that, Anu, because I think not a lot of people do it anymore, and like I and it's really nice when people remember that, yeah, a simple phone call can actually change another person's day altogether.
Mm.
Can I just
How about you,
react
Roby?
to your
Yeah.
story too
Yeah.
about about the LinkedIn story? I am that person because I just recently like curated something. It's like, okay, let's put something out here. Maybe they wanted to, but even I was like, what are you doing this, Ruby? What's your point? It's like, well, let's just put it out there. But I guess that's, just to say that coming from that person who posted an update, I was also like, Ruby, do you really want to say this? But it's also like, okay, but yeah, we want to be employable after this. You'll never know, like you just need to put something out. So it's very curated, right? So coming from that perspective too, where people like see an update from us from social media and it feels like sometimes, oh, your life is so, it's moving along well, just to let you know, no, not really. It's just
Mm.
curated, and it's a highlight, of course. I'm happy with where I
Of
am
course.
today, but it's just a highlight. So that's one point. For me, finding peace to me is to look for role models or people who have same
Mm.
experience I have, and I look at their lives, and they're happy, and they have assimilated to the new countries that they moved to. And I think that's my one way of coping. It's like, okay, I'll be there in that point eventually. It's possible to feel at peace with having lived in two other different countries. And I think when I see people like that who have lived even in more countries than we did, that's when I would realize, like, this is fine. Like, it's just a process. It's just something that you go through, and it's okay to say that I miss this part of my life, but I do not necessarily regret moving on to a
Mm.
different stage in my life, because this is necessary for me to grow as well and to move on to, let's say, a new stage. And I think what has also helped me was to discover new things in the new country that I'm living in. So to not compare them, but just to see and get, like, to make space to experience new things is something that I notice I've been doing recently. So when I go to, let's say, a new city, a new small town that I have to discover, I take it as it is without comparing to all the previous countries that I've lived in, and just
Mm.
experience new things. And I think that's really helping me a lot to find new good things and where I'm living. Yeah. And journaling, of course, is really a big part of my my life. I think I started journaling it back in Japan. So I've been doing it for the last 8 years. Every day, put in something. And of course, I would miss out on some days, but I would try to, like, retroactively put in an entry just to make sure that, I try to capture the highlights of that day. Maybe it's a boring day and it's fine, but I would put something that would remind me distinctly of that day. And I
Mm.
would look back to it once in a while, and I would say,
Mm.
oh, this is the day that I was already preparing for my move. It's been a year now, and that really gives me a sense of time, and I could see that I've progressed from the person that I am last year to today. Like, oh, now I'm actually here. Now I'm
Wow.
actually living that life that I was trying to journal last year, of like, oh, how would my life be in a year? Will I be able to find a new job and all of that? And now the answer is here. So it's good to journal and look back to that, and you'll see your progress little by little. Yeah.
Oh, that's amazing. I feel like Miko hasn't shared his example, or did we already do Miko's example? No.
For me, it was more like an insight on how I feel like no matter what we do, we eventually find like a sense of peace. But for
Yeah.
me, I think
Yes.
if I talk about a concrete example right now, I think coping for me, or like being able to be at peace with it, is really just, and it's not that easy for me to do this, but it's really talking it out with somebody. I think as simple as it is, being somebody who has moved so many times, and then you always get the question of, why did you leave again? Or like, why did you move again? What are your next plans?
Yeah.
What are you gonna do in the future? What's next for you now? Without the fear of being judged, or getting asked uncomfortable questions. Sometimes
Right.
we just don't want to speak to others about our
It's
feelings and our
true.
experiences. But I think all of us have like a select group of people that we're very comfortable opening up our feelings to. And I think that's where
Right.
it
Yeah.
really helped me the most, just being able to talk about what I'm going through with somebody, about the
Yes.
idea
Yeah.
that, not second guessing, but I'm questioning my choices before. Like, for example, I was telling Ruby,
Hmm.
maybe if I didn't leave Japan, I also would have gotten a PR, and things would have led into another direction. Maybe if I, let's say, didn't decide to leave New York, things like this would happen. So the idea that if it gets stuck in your head,
Mm.
if you just keep thinking about it, it's just really difficult. So the mere simple thing of just hashing it out with someone you trust has really helped me a lot. And it's not easy, as simple as it sounds, it's not easy, but I think once you feel you're ready to talk about it, it kind of opens up a lot of things in your head also.
And I
Yeah.
think that's exactly why we also wanted to start a podcast like this. Because if you look at Instagram and if you look at social media in general, everybody only shows the happy and
Yeah.
happy
Yeah. Absolutely.
milestones
Yeah.
about their lives and the good things and the great views. Because at the end of the day, who really wants to show their vulnerable side, right? Because
Yeah.
everybody's scared of facing judgment at the end of the day. So one of the reasons Roby and I also thought of starting this is because we said, it's not all happy. There are like so many things that we wish would go better for us, and sometimes we question our choices. And I think that's exactly why we started this. To be very honest, we just started this for ourselves. We were talking to
Yeah.
each other on the phone one
Hmm.
day, and at the end of the conversation, we're like, this is so nice. We should start a podcast. Not to say that
Yeah.
we're influencers or anything. God, we influence very little in our own day to day. But I think just to create this platform where we talk about, here is what happened, here is a good thing that happened, here's a bad thing that happened, and here is how we navigate through our lives. At the end of the day, I'm hoping that this podcast reaches people and acts as a safe space where everybody can
Mm.
share what they feel like without the fear of being judged. Yeah, let's try to figure this out with each other. I think that was the whole idea of this podcast.
Yeah.
This
For
is our
sure.
coping
Mhm.
mechanism, actually, to find peace.
Roby
Yeah.
said something about role modeling about a while ago, and I don't want to sound patronizing, but as your biggest fan, or one of your biggest fans, um, to be honest, you both of you have been excellent role models in this journey. Because again, not a lot of people talk about it. So people who want to hear from it about this from other people, you've been a great source of peace for all of them. So again, as one of your biggest fans, thank you for
Yeah.
putting this together. And it was also great seeing
Oh,
both of you again after such a long time.
yeah. No,
I am
absolutely.
looking through my notes, and this whole conversation has been so nice. And I'm trying to see how to summarize this conversation because
You can do
I
it.
feel
This
like
is
the
your
last
strength.
1 minute, everything that Miko has said has been like an absolute summary in itself. But in general, I think one thing that we really agree upon is all the moves that we have done, I think have been amazing because we have met some really nice people who've influenced our lives. I think for the three of us, in the process, we've made good friends. When I'm talking about influence, I'm not talking just about who we are as a person today, but even influencing small habits, like this example that you said, Miko, about how you notice this person calling his mom on a daily basis. I think at the end of the day, if anybody is looking to move, please realize that at some point you will feel that life has moved on without you. You have grown up. That is something that I feel when
Yeah.
I watch people, and I'm like, wow, has my outlook changed or have I become a grown up? Like, what is happening right now. So these changes
Mm-hmm.
happen. I don't know if they're for the good or for the worse, but I always tell myself that something good has to come out of this.
Right.
And that's how I use my own perspective to influence a positive change. Because if something is really hard, I'm like, I'm sure there's light at the end of the tunnel. I'm just gonna keep going, and I'm sure that's also that's how I know Roby operates. And listening to Mico, and I can see that's how Mico also operates. So that I guess is the best way to hold on, be resilient, and I think being away, we can make excuses and say, well, I can't show up, but there is also other ways to show up. Very simply, making phone calls, being available, being somebody's shoulder to cry on if you're not there physically, at least over the phone or on video calls. One thing that I really took away from what also Miko said earlier was remind yourself about the purpose of why you made this choice. So every time you feel
Mm-hmm.
like giving up or feel like things are getting hard, I think it's important to realize that I made this choice and I made this for a reason. So how do I stick with it? Which is something that very often we feel we cannot do.
Mm-hmm.
And about social media, it's both a boon and a bane. I actually know
Yes.
people who don't even have an Instagram account because they said, I'm looking at everything and everybody's posts and it looks so fake and made up, which is fair. And if you say,
Yep.
I
Yep.
choose not to look at it, I think that's perfectly fine. Like, what away
Mm-hmm.
with it? Like me, don't look at LinkedIn because you're wondering what you're doing with your career. So what else have I written down? Take it as it is. I think that's something that Roby said that also really stood out to me. When you are journaling, when you're tracking time, when you start recording, this is something that I think I would highly recommend. And journaling doesn't mean it has to be beautiful, it can just be to-do list, it can be a reminder. There are some days where my journal just says sick day, feeling meh. And that's the summary of the entire day. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it even to myself. If it was a bad day, it's a bad day. Yeah, what are you going to do
It
about it? So
is.
take it
Yeah.
as it comes. And if you don't have anybody to talk to, come and post comments on our channel because we are happy to
Yes.
listen to you. Nice comments only, please, because we're still growing and we can use the encouragement.
Yeah. And I think, yes. So I think what I just wanted to add is that the fear of missing out doesn't necessarily mean that you made the wrong choice. It just means that you've lived
So true. So true.
deeply
Mhm.
and, like you left pieces of your heart in different countries, different cities that you've lived in, and that's okay, right? So just means that you've really enjoyed that season of your life and now you're moving on to a new one, and that's fine to feel FOMO sometimes, and that's part of the journey that we have, and it's okay to change. We want to change. We want to change for the better. So
Mm.
it's okay if you're not the same person as you were 3 to 5 years ago, and that's completely fine, right? Because we have
Yeah,
now moved on, we have
that's
different
okay.
priorities. That's completely fine. So
Think
for
about FOMO
everyone,
as growing pains,
correct. Yes, and
as-
we'll always have that as we
because
go
yeah,
through
yeah.
different seasons of our lives. Yeah. Okay. So
Absolutely. Ruby, shall we wrap it up then?
yes, we will. So, to everyone who's listening, and if you like this episode, please comment. We are available in Spotify and YouTube. Click like, subscribe, comment. That helps us a lot. And if you haven't yet, please subscribe so that you won't miss an episode from us. So, in our next episode, talking about LinkedIn and why Anu actually doesn't check LinkedIn and why I post fake post updates in there. So, we will be discussing rebuilding a career from scratch and how does that look like if you're starting all over again because you moved abroad, especially now you're in your mid-career. Yeah, letting go of former titles that you've enjoyed, the seniority that you've enjoyed, and maybe dealing with imposter syndrome as well because you're going through changes, transitions. You're unemployed right now, and you're just a lot of things are going on in your head. So let's discuss that. We don't know if we'll have a guest for that episode, but don't worry, we have a lot to share.
I was gonna say,
So,
thank God I'm not guesting in that episode.
no, fun, Miko.
Oh,
No, no thanks.
Miko, you
Um,
have tons of experience you can share. I know
No
this.
thanks. I don't want to be
I
in
know
that.
this.
Not yet, not yet. Yes. So, guys, thank you very much. Mika, thank you for joining us. Thank you for sharing your experience. I think this is really a good topic. To everyone else, thank you for listening.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.